Hello everyone, this is Rod from Academia Magicae, and today is the first time that we use Academia Magicae after, it's the first video after the migration with the new look of Academia Magicae, migrating from the Alchemist Dental. Thanks for staying with me, staying with us, and continuing our discussions, digging into the occult and the esoteric subjects. Today actually we're talking about two very important subjects and two very important major points in the occult and esoteric tradition, which is the magic signs or the magic symbols and the magic words, like the Voces Magicae, the abracadabra and all these kind of words. So we will discuss today where actually these things come from. How important are they into practicing magic, and especially we'll see some evolution of this sign and these words throughout from the antiquity, so from the Greco-Roman papyri to through the Middle Age, and even in our modern and post-modern times. Well, these are definitely very important, so important, and even in the Chaldean Oracle, in the fragment 150 of the Chaldean Oracle, is written the onomata barbara, so the barbaric names, or the voces magic, the magic words, never change them. So this is the warning then the Chaldean Oracle gives, and this was literally taken by Plotinus, Porphyry and Iamblichus in the structure of their theurgical methods. But where actually the things come from? So, well, let's start first from the magic symbols. So the magic symbols, also known as Charaktêres, what they have in common is that they don't have any phonology. It seems there's no particular way to pronounce these symbols. They have no specific syntax, and they don't have, as far as we know, any semantic value. So these symbols that may or may not go together with magic words, with the onomata barbara or the voces magica, works like some kind of passwords or some kind of language that is supposedly to be recognized in the by the divine world. So these images, as Plotinus put it, is these images have their knowledge and wisdom in themselves, in the character, in the design, and are representation of the intelligible world. And here we see 12 of the most common or mostly recurring magical symbols throughout the magical papyri and so on. So as we see, these symbols are supposed to represent concepts or ideas, divinity, authority, concentrated into one design, into one symbol. So obviously this is tracing back to the Egyptian hieroglyphics, where the written word, the written character, was somehow considered a sacred object, as we know. In fact, even the god Thoth, the god of writing, was also the god of esoteric teachings as well. So for the Egyptian, the words, the written words and the world of esoteric are deeply connected. But then, as we see, of course, they don't resemble much of the Egyptian hieroglyphics, and this sign kept changing in somehow, and it kept changing. The reason behind the changes is essentially because the Egyptian hieroglyphics were studied, were understood, and were written only by a certain elite of people. Was not common in Egypt to know how to write and read hieroglyphics. So they were mainly priests or elitary people And so Egypt going through the Greek invasion, the Persian invasion, and so on and so forth, and the changes in the language, so from hieroglyphics to hieratic, then following the Demotic and the Coptic in order to adjust to the Greek language. So throughout the years, the hieroglyphics, or better, the knowledge on how to write and read hieroglyphics got really thinner and thinner, as well as the magic people, the people that were supposed to use this symbol, tried somehow to replicate what they could have seen in the hieroglyphics. In fact, we see in these 12 most common signs some kind of resemblance. Especially we see the oldest are the symbols, the more they tend to have the circle or circles at the end of lines, so somehow related to the Ankh, the Egyptian Ankh, but also itself to the image of the hieroglyphics itself. So this symbol seems they were not really memorized by people related to magic or magician in the function of making talismans or rituals, but many of them also seems they were created as needed. So in the evolution and the transmission of these characters, we can see the strong influence of the Hebrew culture, the Jewish culture, and the Greek culture when these sigils start to move from the antiquity to the Middle Age. In fact, the sigils started to be more elaborated, and it started to take the hexagram, for instance, from the Hebrew culture. They start to have at the end, instead of having the round that recalls a little bit the Ankh of the Egyptian hieroglyphs, they start to have some crosses. So here we see also the influence of the Christian Gnostic and Christian religion into the manufacturing or the shaping of the evolution of the symbols. Let's go back to the Greek Egyptian period. Because at that point happened something really interesting. While we have the fusion of these two cultures, the Egyptian culture and the Greek culture, and we said on one side we have the Egyptian, where they gave much more importance to the writing, they gave importance to the characters, as we mentioned, as a sacred language, sacred writing. So for the Egyptian, the writing was much superior than the spoken words. For the Greeks, was pretty much the opposite. The Greeks started to have a very pragmatic alphabet, and it was exactly the opposite than the Egyptian. For the Greek, the spoken words, the memorized words, the songs, what you actually can speak, they were much more important than the written words. In fact, even Plato is in this Phaedro warns against the use of written language, because he says it's difficult to put a concept into few letters, and even worse, this letter could be in somehow misunderstood. Only the 7 vowels in the Greek alphabet, only those 7 letters were attributed with some special meaning. In fact, we have 7 vowels, which recalls the 7. There's a correspondence to the 7 planets. There's a correspondence to the notes. There's a correspondence to the music of the spheres, and specific importance to the sound that goes back to the poetry and the song from Orpheus. And so basically, the Greek, which is the first alphabet to have included the vowel, as we know the previous Semantic alphabet did not have, like the Hebrew and the Phoenician, they did not have any vowels included in their alphabet. So for the Greek to include vowels in their alphabet was really a stepping stone, but also they were considering giving a special power, a special treatment In fact, we see the use of vowels written in talismans, phylactery, very often shaped in somehow shaped like in a decreasing order or an increasing order. This is what we call the carmina figurata. Very often in a palindrome, so you could read it from left to right and right to left. And also, as we can see, these vowels repeated within some other images. And most likely the first marriage between the importance of writing and the importance of sound, so the importance of writing from the Egyptian and the importance of sound from the Greek. Most likely the first result is what we see in the famous Ephesia grammata, which is considered one of the first incantation that is left in history. The Ephesia grammata, or the Ephesian words, is like essentially a magic formula coming from the 5th or 4th century BC, and the famous historiographer Pausanias mentioned that these names could be they are derived from being written at the temple of Artemis in Ephesus. Although there's not much more about this Ephesia grammata, what there is more is that we find these words over and over and over again. And here we enter into the realm of the pure magic words, the pure voces magicae. So no more, or not really associated with any symbol anymore, but just spoken or locked into spells. And in among these voces magicae, we can find mainly 3 categories. The first category are words or sounds that are not known, or they're not traceable in somehow to any known or ancient language, like as we say the famous abracadabra, for instance. The second category comes from the use of command coming from Greek or Latin. Like, for example, we have the use of the word exi, which means get out, and exi was used as voces magica to treat as a treatment for diseases or for exorcism. So get out, exi. The third category, which is another broad category, is borrowing verses from considered sacred poems, like from the Orphic hymns, verses from Homer, Virgil. Like, for instance, here we have a spell taken from Homeric verses to cure the eye diseases, and it says, "Take this mist from my eyes that was there before." Especially for love spell, there's a lot of usage of Sapphic verses. Sometimes these verses are taken as they are, sometimes they are mixed with other words or somehow locked into other compositions. This is a sample of a magic word becoming a magic written word. So this example is very interesting because it's mixing what we see before, the carmina figurata, so reducing the words, as well as starting from a voces magica. The voces magica, they start with sicikuma, which is written then decreasing one letter by one letter. And the purpose of this spell actually was to stop a stream of blood. So we can see that the decreasing is also, by analogy, reflecting the reducing of the stream of blood. And in this sample, actually, which is kind of difficult to find the origin, because most likely only the first letters, the siccus, is the Latin word for dry, and the rest is most likely made up and created just for the purpose of the spell. Another example, the very famous Sator square, the Roman Sator square, these palindromes that can be read in many directions, and using palindromes or anyhow writing letters or words that can be read in different direction. It was to be able to carry this name, or basically to make this name known and making it available also into other dimension, as is believed that, for instance, reading right to left or up to down or opposite in somehow is projecting or being able to be understood into another dimension. Here we have another example of a spell, for instance, to conquer the love of a woman, and it goes Amet, Lamet, Temisel. And as in the previous example, we see Amet, it could come from the Latin amete, which means she loves you, while the word Lamet doesn't have any meaning whatsoever. So trying to identify, try to structure these voces magicae, these magic words, is extremely complicated. And even for the Greeks, the ancient Greek themselves, when they had to talk about these voces magicae, they would categorize them into like atopa, means out of place, asema, without meaning, and barbara, so foreign, as there was nothing in their language that could resemble in somehow the voces magicae. These are words that are made to belong to another world. These are words that are made to transcend reality. And it's very interesting what puts forward Versnell in his essay called The Poetic of Magical Charms, an essay in the power of words, which essentially try to explain that this is actually the purpose of the Voces Magica, is to bring us, is to take us to a different level of, to a different world, to a different level of, to a different dimension. So where the abnormal belongs to a reversed world. Like this is, for instance, the example of the palindrome. So you can reverse the word because you want to tap into a reversed world. And in this reversed world becomes a matrix of creation. A matrix of creation that would not be possible in our world. It would not be possible within our functioning, intellectual functioning, with our resounding words, within our logic. So these Voces Magica are really passwords in order to transcend reality, bring us to a different level, and in a level where things are possible. So where a different matrix, where a different creation process takes place. And this is the purpose of these special words. Even the borrowing from the poetic, from the verses of the sacred poets like Orpheus, Virgil, as we say, Homer. We know magic is pretty much related to the arts, and especially with poetry, because poetry is one of the first art. And in fact, poetic derived from the Greek word poiesis, which has a double meaning of composition but also creation. In the theater as well, we are producing, imitating life. So we are creating something. We are becoming like a god. So in the poetry, in the theater, there is this power of creation, and is known as imitatio Dei. So we are imitating God in creating some kind of reality. Finally, I would like to recommend further readings about these very fascinating topics. As I mentioned, one was the Poetics of the Magical Charms, an essay in the power of words by H.S. Versnell. Another very interesting essay is the Charaktêres between Antiquity and Renaissance, Transmission and Reinvention by Richard Gordon. And finally, The Magic of Writing in the Mediterranean Antiquity by David Frankfurter. And this is it for today's discussion. Thanks again for staying with me. If you like the content, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so you will be updated whenever there will be some new videos coming up. Again, thanks and have a great day. Bye bye.